And welcome back to Panic Butter. This is Tony. Glad to have you here. Got a good one for you put together tonight. We're going to go all the way from the military, see what happens there. Look in on the Philadelphia experiment. Have you ever heard of it? It's pretty interesting. And the creepy. Some paranormal. This one will get you. Here we go.
On the night of March 23, 2004, Liam Collins, along with the rest of his unit, find themselves stranded when their vehicle and equipment experience sudden and unexplained failure. On a desolate stretch of unfamiliar terrain 14 miles out from base, the incident leaves them without the means of transportation and, more troublingly, radio equipment that ceases to function. In the face of this unexpected setback, the soldiers embark on a resolute journey towards what initially appears to be a rustic village, with the anticipation of seeking assistance and refuge from the local inhabitants. As the team enters the village, it quickly becomes clear that it's deserted, with empty huts and silent alleys devoid of life. Undeterred by the unsettling atmosphere, the team continues their search for occupants. However, their sergeant briefly observes a disquieting shift in the environment, as the once present winds give way to a harsh stillness that resonates throughout their surroundings. After an unspecified amount of time, a member of the team raises attention to the failure of timekeeping equipment, adding another layer of confusion and bewilderment to the team's predicament. Exercising sound judgment and deliberation on the situation, the team's sergeant ultimately chooses to reverse course and lead the team back to their stranded vehicles. Following the decision to alter their path, they swiftly become cognizant of a disquieting realization. They had inadvertently lost their bearings. Despite their best efforts to follow what they believe to be the correct path, they encounter unfamiliar areas that do not match their recollection. Driven by mounting perplexity, Private Collins, along with another member of the team, take decisive action and ascend to the rooftops of one of the many structures, seeking a vantage point that may provide with a better overview of the area. A futile attempt in the darkness of the now seemingly endless village. As the remainder of the team waited from below, a member of the unit drew attention to a caught sight of movement in the periphery of their vision. The team observed an individual, resembling what they initially assumed to be a village inhabitant, positioned on the pathway ahead. Upon an attempt to establish communication, the individual abruptly turned and vanished amidst one of the seemingly infinite pathways, eluding any further interaction. This engagement was not captured on the helmet cam of Private Collins. Witnessing this occurrence, the team decided to cautiously pursue the individual, hoping to locate other inhabitants who could provide assistance. However, as they made their way through the winding paths, a growing sense of unease settled upon the team, who became increasingly alert to the possibility of an ambush. As the team presses forward, their senses now heightened, they stumble upon a perplexing sight. Esoteric and enigmatic monuments, hanging like silent sentinels amidst the desolate village, became increasingly apparent in their surroundings. Members of the team exchange uncertain glances, with the peculiar artifacts drawing the attention of some with an almost magnetic pull. 3 members of the team, enthralled by the surreal sight before them, implored their comrades to proceed without them, assuring them of their swift return to the group. The unwavering resolve and intensity in their voices unsettled their fellow soldiers, who exchanged apprehensive glances, sensing the gravity of their comrades' fixation. Disturbingly, their sergeant was among the affected individuals, displaying an alarming fixation on the mysterious artifacts, further deepening the concern and uncertainty among the team. Tensions quickly escalated, as the affected members grew increasingly agitated by their comrades' attempts to break their fixation on the artifacts. Manifesting as verbal outbursts, the initial signs of agitation quickly escalated into physical confrontations, resulting in Collins engaging in a brief yet intense grappling match with his sergeant. As the altercation is quickly diffused, another disconcerting development unfolds within the team. One member, overcome by the mounting strangeness of their situation, succumbs to a state of mental unraveling. In a disturbing display, he begins to exhibit erratic behavior, engaging in a frenzied dance and flailing his arms in an unsettling manner that disturbs the team further. In the captured footage, the troubled soldier can be observed mouthing words, his lips moving in a desperate attempt to convey a message. However, the intermittent audio corruption that plagues this segment of the recording renders deciphering of his words an impossible feat. In the midst of these strange and disorienting ordeals, a member of the team, still exhibiting what seems to be a sound state of mind, draws attention to their current count, revealing a disturbing truth. Private Reynolds, who had just been with the team moments earlier, inexplicably became separated from the group. In an endeavor to locate the missing member within the seemingly infinite expanse of the village, Private Collins, together with the remaining soldiers, organized themselves into pairs and establish a prearranged rendezvous point as a contingency measure, a feeble attempt to retain some semblance of control amidst their escalating situation. The mentally unraveled soldier, James Roberts, continues to exhibit erratic behavior, unresponsive to verbal communication, as he persists in his slow and unsettling movements. Their sergeant, Ethan Thompson, suspiciously elects to remain put and takes on the responsibility of monitoring James's actions. Despite their concerns, the rest of the team, driven by a sense of duty and curiosity, presses on. Privates Ryan Mitchell and Ben Anderson move ahead in a forward direction, while Liam Collins and Eric Johnson endeavor to retrace their steps, hoping to locate Reynolds. As you'll soon witness, the team's endeavor to reach the designated rendezvous point inevitably culminates in failure. As Collins and Johnson meticulously retrace their steps in search of Reynolds, a disconcerting realization can be made. Areas that can be identified as paths the team had previously traversed are now adorned with the artifacts, suspended in positions they had not occupied before. This unmistakable detail, deserving of the soldiers' attention, strangely remains unaddressed between the pair. As the footage continues, Collins's growing fixation with his surroundings becomes increasingly evident. His attention wavers from Johnson and the path ahead, becoming lost in contemplation of the peculiar objects for extended periods of time. Amidst his mounting preoccupation with the artifacts, Collins's attempts to shout and call out for Reynolds gradually fade into silence. It is at this juncture that the footage undergoes a further escalation of censorship, obscuring even more of the visual and auditory content. After what's speculated to be an approximate duration of 50 minutes, the footage resumes. However, upon the resumption of the footage, Private Eric Johnson is conspicuously absent, his whereabouts unknown. During the last remaining segments of video footage, Private Collins can be seen wandering aimlessly for hours throughout the village, his gait and demeanor increasingly peculiar. Eventually, Private Collins meanders his way to a specific area, moving with an eerie sense of purpose, as if he knows exactly where he is headed. He comes to a halt in that spot and remains motionless for the remaining 30 minutes of the recorded footage. With this final frame, the helmet cam footage abruptly ends. Ethan Thompson, James Roberts, Ryan Mitchell, Ben Anderson, Eric Johnson, Mark Reynolds, and Liam Collins are never seen again. Upon the discovery of Liam Collins's helmet cam, which is located 7 miles from the team's stranded vehicles in the Registan Desert, the team is quickly declared KIA by the U.S. military. Despite extensive efforts, the village depicted in the footage remains elusive, and to this day, it has yet to be located.
What? You ever heard of anything like that? That's pretty strange. Got creep written all over it, huh? Creepy, creepy, creepy. Military creepy, nonetheless. They disappeared. Have to look into it more and see what's up. There's a lot of strange things. Here's another something from the past. In Philadelphia. That's right, you heard of that before. The Philadelphia experiment. It's pretty old. Here we go.
The Philadelphia experiment, as I previously stated, locked up at the Phoenix Project, and it could only lock up on a very critical date. And that critical date was the 12th of August, 1943, and the 12th of August, 1983. Theoretically, it could have locked up in 1963, but there was no ongoing experiment at that time, such as the Phoenix Project, which was required. Dr. John Van Neumann was, of course, the second and final director of the Philadelphia experiment. He was also the first director of the Phoenix Project. when it came online after the war, and it went through several phases. The important phase of the Phoenix Project was from 1975 through 1983, when they developed the capability of time travel and the time tunnels, as Dr. Carl Sagan liked to call them, the wormholes in space. Wormholes in space and time. They had the capability and it was fully functional. Someone had to know, in order to get these two experiments on either end to lock up, that there were critical dates in which it would work, and the rest of the years in between it would not work. And someone had to communicate this information to both ends. And this is the thrust of my discussion, and what happened, and why this whole thing locked up, and what some of the mechanics of and technology of time. This is somewhat poorly done, but I'm not a great artist. We'll call this 1, 2, 3, three dimensions of physical reality as we know them. And according to theory, Einstein et al., time at the right angle, we'll call a fourth dimension, is at a right angle theoretically. These three physical dimensions flow and exist in time. If there was no time, our physical reality would not exist. So supposedly these are at right angles. They flow according to a rate which you can describe in the torus of time. But there's another important aspect, and this is a very important one. We actually have a fifth dimension, we'll call it T2, which is the fifth. And it is, if you look at it on end from the torus, take a cross-section, this is a neat little thing which is really another vector on the end of the fourth dimension, which is the fifth. And this thing is describing, in essence, a circle. And as it corkscrews ahead, we call it forward time by mere reference. We don't know whether we're going forward or we're going backwards. It depends upon which universe you're looking at. But it creates the fourth dimensional vector in the center, which is a more or less even flow, theoretically very even. We'll not go into other problems which could change that rate in terms of the universe. This was what we were playing with in the project, and actually this is what they were playing with in both projects. It is time and its essence. The Eldridge had a field created around it, the purpose of which was, again using the pointer, and looking at this, the purpose of which, when the confined field of the Eldridge, was to change the helical rate. If you change the helical rate, you change the time flow, but you don't want to speed it up to the point where the ship disappears. What you want to do is something rather exotic. I'm saying what you want to do because what they wanted to do and what they did do are two different things. Speaking in terms of looking on the end of this, let's say this torus, our reality here, we'll call it reality 1. You have a second reality at 90 degrees, a third and a fourth, and you can even have a fifth. The second order reality is at 90 degrees. But you don't want to take the average that far in terms of the time element. You're rotating it around the torus, and what you do, you start pulling it around by speeding up the corkscrew, then you lock it at that point by going back to the normal rate, so that at 60 degrees approximately, the average is optically invisible and radar invisible. If you stop a little before that, which is what they did in the final test, let's say perhaps 45 degrees, it's radar invisible but not optically invisible. Almost, but not quite. So you rotate it and you hold it in terms of what is within the field. What's outside, theoretically, you don't worry about. Well, that was the theory, and of course the aspect of this is very interesting, namely the Eldridge and the generators were creating a sixth order field so that they could manipulate the fifth order field, which was T2, or the second order time. We have five dimensions, if you will, 5 orders, however you want to express it, in our reality. And again, going back to what Bob said the other night, which is very neat, you have a 6th dimensional order, which is an isolation between the next 5, which is the reverse universe, actually the contraturn of matter. And if you go beyond the 11th, as von Neumann knew, you then are in hyperspace and the 12th order. To get this project to work in terms of shoving the Eldridge into hyperspace and creating the bubble and creating the entire rift in time required a 12th order function. Now, the Eldridge was capable of a 6th order function, which would not do it. And I remember some of the discussions of von Neumann after it was all over, as he would say, this was in later years, well, the Eldridge had a 6th order capability. The project here at Phoenix had an 8th order capability. Where did the other 4 orders come from? They came from a very interesting function. The Phoenix project normally could only produce an 8th order function, but it had the capability in terms of its memory systems and the actual network, the lattice of the LC networks, which are the energy storage networks, and the way they were designed, they could store etheric orders of energy. Because it was a 25th order network, could store up to 25 orders of energy, up to the 25th. By turning the system on and the station on the 1st of August and leaving it on continuously, approximately every 24 hours, because they went through the entire torus of time through plus and minus infinity, they added 1 order of reality. After 5 days, they were the 12th order. And by the 12th, the Earth's biorhythms are only draw in terms of how they peak out. They produce literally a spike. 12 August, 12 August, 12 August. In 20-year intervals. Concern to us. And also 2003. Here sat the Eldridge until it moved. And here sat the Phoenix project. It did not move. It was rather well anchored. And in the middle of 63, there's essentially nothing. There's another peculiar thing happens. As you start this business of going through time, let's mark this as 43, let's mark this as 63, and let's mark this as 83. You are looking at it on sidewise again. You're actually a full circle for the 40 years. It takes 40 years to go the full circle of 20 years where you have a synchronization point, you're 180 out of phase, which can be represented as a sine wave, like so, with a crossover point in 63. But this is a flat representation. This doesn't mean it's reversing polarity per se, but it does. The problem was created, and the problem was created is this. Time also has waves. Like a standing wave in electromagnetic theory on an RF transmission line, if you don't damp it properly and its characteristic impedance, let us show theoretically a nice little line where we have RF on it, rapidly terminated, it's even, of constant voltage, and as we say, the standing wave ratio is 1. That means you have perfect transmission and there are no waves coming back at you. If this thing is not properly terminated out here in the characteristic impedance of the source and the transmission line, whatever you're using, you start to get funny little things. These things start to build up, and you start to come down here to a lower level, and these start to build up, and you start coming to a lower level. You build up standing waves, and these things go up and they come back. And when it gets bad enough, you have enormous voltage levels. And theoretically, they can go unterminated out at this end. Theoretically, can go to infinity. They don't, for practical reasons. But you get the same problem in time. Got it. And this means something very extraordinary. If you have standing waves in time, you will find that this time factor starts doing this. The standing waves produce a phenomena of standing waves which go back and forth, and if you start whipping through the 63 point, the crossover point, and create a reverse time wave, you then have, in the reality in which you're dealing, the artificial reality as well as coupled to both ends, and most particularly in the 83 end where the Phoenix Project is, you can generate, and they were in the process of generating, a reverse time wave. What happens if you have a forward and reverse time wave hitting the physical Earth at the same time? As I found out very recently, Dr. Van Neumann knew what the problem was and knew what could result. And they had to set up a special team prior to the critical date of 12 August 83 to handle the problem. Had they not found the correct team of scientists, there were 4 involved: Dr. Van Neumann, a second man whom I know but I will not give the name of because he doesn't want to give him, and 2 scientists from the future. Yes, I did say the future, because with Montauk they could go into the future or the past. They got a team together. They moved hardware to 1963 to provide damping, because they knew that if this thing was not damped sufficiently, at least to a critical level, to prevent the reverse time wave from hitting, do you have any idea what would have happened? They would have torn the entire tectonic plate structure of the North American continent apart, ripped off the entire top level of the North American continent, probably to the Rocky Mountains. To a depth of 500 to 700 feet, the ocean would have roared in and we would have been back in the Stone Age instantly. That is what they faced, and that is what they had to prevent. And since I'm here talking to you today, they prevented it. No, they wouldn't be here, any of us. That was the problem they faced, and that is what they did correct. There was a code name for that project. The code name was Atlanticus, not.
Wow, that is deep. There's a lot to unpack there. Serious brain cramp if you sit and listen to it all. Whip out some paper, do some graphs, and get your own chart working. That's where you'll be. Brain cramp every day. Up next, the paranormal and the creepy, intense paranormal.
On May 10th of 2024, a small family gets together to celebrate someone's birthday. As with any birthday celebration, the traditional happy birthday song is sung by everyone there. However, it would be during this festive party that something very strange happens. According to Brookie Diaz, the birthday girl, there hasn't been a day where she hasn't thought about this incident. What happened on her birthday will forever linger in her head. It's around 9 p.m. when this is captured. Take a look.
Happy birthday, dear Brookie. No. Happy birthday to you. Make a wish. Make a wish. Make a wish.
And many more.
Right.
Woo! Almost.
Whoa. All right, Jackie.
I'm taking for
Oh, forgot. I don't want to know. I don't want to know the details. All right, here, honey. The girl's got to have a present. This is from me. Yeah. Yeah. Jackie, press its pause.
Much better now, so whatever you can, just come visit me, okay?
Shut up. No way. That is not work. That is not work.
Somehow, a toy fire truck goes off right when the family listens to Dad's message. Now, this fire truck isn't just a random toy, but a collectible that the father cherished. Considering that this went off at the same time, they can't help but think that Dad was reaching out to them. Whether or not this might have been a coincidence remains uncertain. However, it's the following video, taken only a week later, that leaves Brookie and her family completely baffled. Brookie's lying in bed, trying her best to record the following.
I just missed a call from my dad. He's been gone. Like, I just heard his voice one more time.
It's because of this incident that Brookie believes her father had been present. She took it as a sign that her dad was reassuring her that he was still there, even though she had missed the opportunity to talk to him. Whether or not he was actually on the line is unknown, but nevertheless, it was already strange to hear the teddy bear with his voice talking at this moment. While this occurrence was already baffling enough, something happens only days later that leaves her extremely unnerved. Now, the following incident, as she believes, had nothing to do with her father. Whatever happened that night, according to her, made her feel immensely terrified, which she knows her father would never do. It's late at night when this is captured. Now, this particular video is something that Brookie doesn't like talking about, and for good reason. She was so shaken by this incident that talking about it now brings up strong emotions for her. Although knowing that posting this video wouldn't help, she hopes that someone could explain what happened. While some believe it might have been her dad's spirit reaching out, she believes it was something else. That night, she was overcome with a sense of dread, the likes of which she had never felt before. So understandably, she would rather talk about the pleasant moments that were caught on camera. At least these help her to cope with the passing of her father. These moments serve to remind her that despite being gone, her dad will always be there. As with all videos, this one remains a mystery.
How cool was that? Was that intense or what? Yeah, wasn't expecting that, huh? Man, that was good. Well, that's it for us today. Thanks for being here. If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on. You know what'll happen. We'll see you at the beginning of the next one. Bye.